James Bond Stockdale. I told you he is the senior ranking officer for the Navy, a Rhodes Scholar, an Oxford Scholar, a brilliant mind. He was the CAG on board one of the carriers. CAG being the guy that's in charge of all air operations on board the deck of the ship. And when he was shot down, he was a plethora of information about combat operations, combat plan, what goes on, what do they strike. And Stockdale stood up to him. And in one instance, where Stockdale had been beaten and tortured, and finally submitted to say something, was sent back to his room to re-change his clothes. And he took a stool that he had to sit on in his cell, solitary, and he beat himself about the head. Severely beat himself. And when that wasn't enough, he went to the wall. And he beat his head against the wall, such that it was bloody and bruised and swollen. And when the North Vietnamese opened his cell to ask him to come out and make a press conference statement, they turned around and closed the door. For he was defiant. He denied them that opportunity. Was he beaten and tortured brutally again because of what he did? Yes. On another instance, he again has been asked to come out and make a statement. Denied, beaten and tortured. Finally gets to the ultimate point. Yes, I will make the statement. They sent Stockdale back into his cell to change into different clothes. And he had a razor blade stuck in the crack in the wall at home. He took that razor blade and he slit his wrist. And his statement was, I would rather die for my country than submit to the enemy. When they came in to get Admiral Stockdale to make his presentation, he was lying in a pool. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor for his dedication and defense and defiance. James Bond. Paul Galani, just an average Joe, Navy guy. He was told to make a press conference for Time or Life magazine. Here's how he posed. The North Vietnamese didn't catch the fact that he was sending them the double digit. Had no idea until the editor for Life magazine finally caught the double digits and airbrushed him out. When word got back to the North Vietnamese that Paul Galani had given him the finger, they brutally beat and tortured him. He was defiant. You too can be defiant. Dick Stratton, another guy, shot himself down, believe it or not. He's an A4 pilot, had rockets on board, big Zunis. And as he shot his rockets into a target area, one of the fins of the rocket went bad. Hit another rocket, exploded the rockets in front of him, fired his engines, and he ejected. Pretty bad to shoot your own self down and end up in North Vietnam. But he did. In this instance, he was beaten and tortured to make a presentation in front of the press. And what he elected to do is play Manchurian Candidate. For those that can't remember the 1950 because you were never even born, your parents weren't born. But it is a classic of how the North Koreans had brainwashed your American fighting man during the Korean War. And all he did was bow deeply and turned 90 and bowed deeply, and kept doing that round and round and round, until one of the members in the press in the back yells out, "You have brainwashed him!" And the North Vietnamese, post the conference, took the reporters away and took him out to be beaten and tortured. But he was defiant. He did not make a statement. Seaman Hagel. Okay, this is a rare duck. Yes, he's a seaman. He's a postal clerk on a destroyer in the Gulf of Tonkin. And you ask me, how in the hell does he end up as a prisoner of war in Hanoi, North Vietnam? He's back on the fantail. That's the cast end of the boat, smoking a cigarette. And the boat opens up its big guns, and it startles him, and he falls over the railing into the water. And he floats for a day, and he ends up being captured by fishermen. Now the North Vietnamese know he's of little or no use for propaganda, military intelligence, anything. So they gave him the job of being the village idiot, sweeping the courtyard. And he would sweep according to the tap code. So he was communicating to everybody in the camp as he was sweeping around. And when he didn't have a room, it was especially during the winter season with the winds coming out of China, everybody's noses was running. We were coughing and spitting and sputtered, and he would sneeze and cough. The tap code. Pass it on what was going on within the camp. His main claim to fame was that he memorized 250 names at the time of those who were held as prisoners of war in Hanoi. And he memorized them to old MacDonald. When it came up time for a certain group, which was prohibited, for early release, Hagdahl was ordered to go. And he says, "Sir, I will not. For the rules of the camp are first in, first out." You have Alvarez, August 1964, first guy shot down. He's going to be the first guy out. He's way in the middle of the pack. He says, "I'm not going." Admiral Stockdale and Dick Stratton ordered him to take early release, for he has top secret information to get back on the names of everybody that's still alive and those who have died in captivity. When he got back to the Pentagon and he started to do his spiel, and old MacDonald at the speed of old MacDonald had a farm, they would pause him in the middle and say, so they were trying to catch up with each and every guy's name. And he'd have to start all the way back and go all the way through. So they finally taped it, which was smart in the first place. So they could play it back and slowly get everybody's. After his release in 1973, he went to the Navy's survival school and taught survival techniques. Okay, it's 1700. I got time for just a little bit more. But today, probably one of the most highly decorated members in the United States military, other than Audie Murphy, which was during war, was a Medal of Honor winner and had a stack of medals. But Day, also a Medal of Honor. A great American hero, a personal friend of mine. And when he was shot down, has a missed defect in the F-100, basically top secret at the time. Was shot down just about the same area I was. Shot by a SAM, just like I was. Captured, just like I was. Unfortunately, he was in an F-100. And when he went out, he broke his arm, his head hit the canopy bow, put a giant gash in the deal, and the ejection seats had rocket correction, the shotgun shell type charges to blast you out of the seat. He broke his back. Not broken that he can't walk, but it's severely damaged his back. Vertebrae. He was captured, held captive for about 3 or 4 days, And he noticed that at night, they only had one guard, and that guard usually went to sleep about, an hour or two after sunset. So Bud drags himself south. It's just got to go 12 clicks. That's not far. The DMZ, to cross the river, come into a fire base where Marines are at and be rescued. And he drags himself like this. No water, no food, great pain. As he reaches the DMZ, he sees helicopters coming into the fire base, just on the other side. And he goes, oh my God, I've been rescued. I will be rescued. I've been saved. As he crossed the river, he found that the Marines were not coming in, but they were extracting Marines because a North Vietnamese regiment was overrun that province. So he walked into a regiment of North Vietnamese. When he saw that, he turned and ran, rather than shot in the butt, captured again. Bud Day won the Medal of Honor for his efforts during his evasion rescue, just like Lance Saijon, Medal of Honor winner. Great American hero, good friend of mine. For those that come to Vance on a routine basis, know that we pay great tribute to Robbie Wright. A great American hero, and he was a senior ranking officer at the time in Hanoi. When he got shot down, that picture from Time magazine came out about 2 weeks after his shooting. And the North Vietnamese looked at that and says, oh boy, do we have a plethora of propaganda that we can get out of this movie. Robbie denied it. He spent 4 years in solitary confinement. And it's going to be from the corner of this wall to the corner there by the easel and out to about the desk area here. It's about 10 steps, turn around, 10 steps back. Not steps, 10 feet. So it's going to be about 3.25 steps. Wall. Blacked out. No light. He spent 4.5 years. Correction, 4 years in solitary confinement. That'd be 7.5 years of captivity. A great American hero. Here you'll see a picture of Admiral Stockdale and Robbie after the peace accords were signed in 1973. You look up there in the upper right-hand corner, the guard behind him. I'll attribute it to this story. Christmas, about 1968. Bud Day is in a cell with about 15 other guys, relatively close, cap distance-wise, to where Robbie was in solitary confinement. Christmas, Bud Day tap. We want to have Christmas services today on this Sunday. Robbie sends back authorized. They start singing. And the North Vietnamese guards come racing up to their cell, banging on it, telling them they cannot sing, they must be quiet, you cannot do this against camera rules. They sing louder. Pretty soon they leave and go to Robbie's cell. And they drag him out, for they know that he is a senior ranking officer, and he was most likely the guy that authorized that church service. And so as they were dragging him out to be tortured, they broke into the Star Spangled Banner. Have you ever heard a song like that in that environment? Robbie's chest went, and he stood up as tall as he could. And rather than being drugged to torture, he stepped sharply. When asked later how he felt at that moment, he says, I felt as if I were 9 foot tall, and I could go hunting a bear with a switch. one of you sophomores was at the academy. And you must have seen his statue. And on that statue, which is 9 foot tall, is written an inscription. And Ross Perot, a good friend of ours, made that statue in honor of Ross. Okay, I think I've done enough. There's nothing greater than that day, the 12th of February, 44 years ago, our first prisoners of war were released. 45 years ago, on the 16th of February, I was shot down. That's what it looks like on the 141 after we were feet wet. Operation Homecoming on the left. Years later, at the White House and at the Nixon Library, I ask you never forget those that have yet to come home. 1,616 Americans are still listed as missing in action from the war. And I ask that each and every one of you pray for their families, for they have yet to find out the true fate of their loved ones. And questions? Don't hesitate to ask. I know you got to go to ORI and stand and get more things done. So the longer you stay in here, the less time you stay there. It's air conditioning here and coffee not out on the courtyard in front of the library. So, yes, no? Yes, sir.
Sir, Cadet Richie, Foxtrot Flight. Today, if pilots are shot down over Syria,
Yes.
they know their fate is dead.
That's not correct.
Well, sir, my question is, what was the mindset of pilots being shot down? Because you didn't know right away what
Exactly.
condition.
You have no idea what your fate is. We're talking about mine specifically. When I was shot down, I landed right in the corner of a rice paddy and had 2 squads of guys coming up each dike towards me, armed with AK-47s. I had 4 hand grenades, because most of my sorties were Laos. Laos was not taking prisoners, and generally they would chop your head off with a machete. So therefore, I was going to take as many of them with those 4 grenades as I could before I was decapitated. In this case, I asked John Wayne, my friend, the Duke, I says, discretion or better part of valor. Should we try to untake these grenades and go chuck and get shot? Or should we just do this? And John told me, he says, short finger, discretion is a better part of valor in this instance. And so that's what I did. Now for your case in Syria, we have SAR forces that are available, not guaranteed that they'll get to you. And if you are captured, you're very likely, like the one Jordanian, be burned at the stake or decapitated. But we have SAR forces available, and they're moving closer and closer to the area. That's why I always tell my friends that fly F-15s, F-16s, A-10s, AC-130s, always save some rounds for a SAR, search and rescue, before somebody's shot down in your flight. You can put down 20 or 25 millimeter or 30 millimeter cannon fire to keep the enemy away long enough to get somebody in to rescue. Your military will do everything in its power to save you, to rescue you, even to lose more men or women. Good enough? Other question?
So we're going to have to get going.
Okay, good.